Good evening, City of Norwood. This is Mayor Victor Schneider. I'm coming to you from City Hall, from the Mayor's office. This is a interesting Easter address, State of the City address, at a time that's, I think it's really necessary to have an address to the community, to maybe shed some light on some areas, but also to reassure everyone that the City of Norwood's moving forward, and that, quite frankly, our county and our state and our country is still moving forward, and there's progress being made on a regular basis. There are challenges, absolutely challenges that we are going through right now, but there's progress being made. And although this is a troubling time, it is not the most troubling time that this country has ever went through. And with this period of time, we are learning a lot about ourselves, and we're learning a lot about our country. So for the cities, from the city's perspective, I want to talk about a few different things. One, I want to talk about the City of Norwood's COVID-19 response and some of the actions that have taken place. I want to talk about keeping it all in perspective. And then I want to talk about maybe the first 90 days, not maybe, I want to talk about the first 90 days as the mayor of the City of Norwood and what we have accomplished and what we plan to accomplish in the future. Then I want to talk a little bit about city services, how we're going to be improving city services, some of the legacy problems that we've had, some of the problems that have been around for a long time that need to be addressed quickly and unfixed. And finally, I want to talk about a little bit about communication tools and then the future, the very bright future for the City of Norwood. So first, kicking it off with probably the most important part of it, and the part that is really probably providing the most stress for everyone right now. And I say stress, but for some people it's almost like the opposite of what you would expect a stressful time to be. So we've been forced to slow down. We've been forced to step back from our job, the daily grind, the regular stuff that we do every day, the challenges that we overcome, and quite frankly, what we draw strength from, which is our ability to get things done, to be productive. And we satisfy those cravings by working hard and steady, and we just keep going. Well, we've been forced to slow down. We've been forced to step back and really reevaluate what is important and what is really important to us. So that's an important aspect of it. So for the COVID-19 stuff, starting out this part of it is an important aspect of it. What have we done, the city? What have we accomplished right now? So the first thing, we declared a state of emergency. We declared a state of emergency. We were ahead of the pack. We actually got our declaration out before a lot of the other communities started jumping on that. We were right behind the city of Cincinnati. They recognized the importance of it. What does a state of emergency do for us, for the city, and for the community? You know, first of all, it really informed the public. It was something that was the letter that went out at the very beginning in March. Where it was a letter that went out to all the citizens of the City of Norwood, and we don't have the greatest communication tools. We'll talk about that, but it was a letter that went out on Facebook, and we asked for it to be shared, and it did get quite a bit of response, and we're very pleased with that. But the idea was to help everybody understand that there's something big brewing, very big, and I know China and the media had already started, there was already a lot of understanding of it. Maybe there was something going on. But quite frankly, I was like many others thinking, this will blow by just like everything else does. When it comes to the United States, a lot of stuff that happens in the world you don't have to worry about. But this was one that we had to take a notice of, and we did up front. So basically announcing it to the public, making sure they understand it, customizing and accelerating some of the processes for virtual meetings and different things that the city needed to do to put plans in place. Creating eligibility for aid is what a declaration of an emergency does. So we knew that there would be some different aid packages coming out to help our businesses, whether they're small businesses, medium or large. There were some aid packages that would come out, and you'd have to have a declaration of emergency for them to take advantage of those relief actions. This was even before the $2 trillion and all of the stuff that was going on with the federal government. The other part that an emergency declaration gave us was the ability to enforce some orders. So the stay-at-home order that went in place pretty much right after that, it gave us the ability to recognize that and to, if necessary, which really it hasn't been that necessary, to enforce that order. And then those are the important parts of what the emergency declaration did. What the city of Norwood's response has been with that is right away the safety service director and I got with the police department, police chief, fire chief, both of them, and started talking about contingency plans and actions, emergency actions that they needed to take to really protect the emergency services that the city supplies on a regular basis. So when you think about those, you think about the police department and the fire department. Starting with the fire department, it's emergency response protocols that they have as standard practices, policies and procedures that they do on a regular basis. So our fire department is a great fire department. They are really professionals. They do a great job. They really think about what's best for our community when it comes to emergency responses. So typically they will throw, if there's an ambulance run that comes in, if there's an EMS run that comes in, they will throw some extra resources at it to make sure we've got the resources on hand to take care of that challenge quickly and to provide the best emergency medical care that they can get. Well, in this situation, that might not be the absolute best thing for the city's responses. So they had to look at their different response protocols. When they typically would send, two guys into a home to take care of a patient, now they would maybe send one person into the home to scope it out to figure out what exactly needs to be done, and then they can talk beyond that and decide what's necessary and what needs to happen. So that's a big part of it. They were also another thing they had to look at right away was resources. And when I say resources, I'm talking about ambulances. Not just human resources, but I'm talking about the emergency response resources. Because if you do transport a person that's potentially has COVID-19, you have to decontaminate that ambulance. How long does it take to decontaminate an ambulance? It's not a 2-minute procedure. It's not like they can run it through a car wash and it's all done inside and out. So they have the standard procedures of restocking out all the emergency medical supplies. Now they had a lot of added procedures that needed to go in place to make sure that we were not causing a problem with some of our emergency response. The other part is personal protective equipment. So the fire chief, he talks about burn rate, how much personal protective equipment they have, considering how many runs they have. So they are monitoring that. They're making sure their inventories and their stocks are in place. They're making sure they can get more if they need it. Those are all items that had to be addressed within the fire department. The scope of services that had changed, and they had to really implement some changes to adapt to that. So those are important aspects of it. Same thing for our police department. And when you talk about a police department is typically hands-on. Well, now you want a police department that's much more hands-off and sort of standoffish. So if you have a domestic, one person will step outside, the other person steps inside, you have two police officers, you discuss the situation, you've got them separated, one's in, one's out. Well, now wait a minute, do we really want a police officer going inside of that home where they potentially can't? Now the distancing is different. Now they're in, so even changing those protocols and the things that they're doing there, those were important aspects of it. Can you run two police officers to a cruiser? We've got candidates, or we've got police officer recruits that are going through the academy right now. Well, they closed the academy down. What are we doing with those candidates, or for those recruits? They're not really candidates that are going through. So there were a lot of changes that had to be looked at, how we're implementing staff and what we're doing. Then also, not just response protocols and personal protective equipment. We don't assign police cars to a police officer. So now at the end of the shift, how are they cleaning that car? How are they decontaminating, making sure that car's clean and ready for the next crew to go? Those are important aspects of it with the police department. The police department also has a roll call. Every day you have a roll call. You've seen it. It's been on all the TV shows. You see where all the police officers come together and they talk about what's going on. What are issues that are happening? What do they need to really focus on that next shift? Well, how do you bring all these guys together for that roll call? Chief Kramer basically said, hey, we're either going to use council chambers, which is a bigger area where the guys can spread out and we can keep our social distancing, or we're going to do them outside, or we've got to just find a solution to do these things. So that communication, all of those changes that you really don't think about but had to take place, were put in place. The second, or I should say, probably the second biggest priority for me in the discussions with them was, what are our contingency plans for staffing? Because if you have 2 paramedics that are potentially exposed, how long do they go offline? Or if they've got an exposure, is it 14 days that they're now quarantined? And if you're doing that to 2 paramedics and then it happens to 2 more paramedics, and now you've got a whole fire department. I think there was a fire department in Washington that had a huge exposure. And, so that's the part that sort of gave me the sleepless nights and continues to, because you think about, well, what would we do if we had that? And somebody said, well, that's no big deal. You've got mutual aid. Wait a minute. Mutual aid from who? From a fire department that's not getting affected by COVID-19 because they're somehow exempt from this problem? So, the city of Cincinnati, St. Bernard, any of the other communities that we typically would get mutual aid from are running into some of the same stuff. So the fire chief pretty much closed down the firehouse and has limited as much as he can. He has limited the exposure, and actually I think he made the right decision and has done a good job at it. The police department has been shut down also. So those are important aspects of when you talk about emergency services. That is a critical service that everybody expects, and you start thinking about how they are accomplishing the task at hand and keeping everybody safe, not just the community safe, but also the staff. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of challenges with that. For the City Hall, what do we do? Of course, City Hall, they are essential services, but they're not emergency essential services. So you have, a water department that's running. You have a building department, and although the stay-at-home order has closed down quite a bit. I mean, retail is shut down, and the restaurants are shut down. But there's an awful lot of industry and awful lot of business that's still going on. Siemens is one of the businesses that's still running full bore because they provide materials and equipment to essential operations. So if you think about a hospital runs a huge they run air conditioning and they run huge chillers, and their chillers operate with these huge electric motors. Well, guess what Siemens does? Siemens works on those electric motors, and to keep these buildings going and to keep these operations going. And even when you talk about the laboratories, they are all essential. So Siemens is still up and operational. Paycor is still up and operational. There's still people that are out there working. There's still a lot of business that is going on in the city of Norwood. So for City Hall operations, we've got to keep going. They are essential services. Our water department needs to keep moving and does keep moving. For the first week when this all happened, we shut down some stuff, and then John Murphy, the safety service director, and I sat down and we talked about what can we do, how can we staff, how can we bring people together. I had some discussions with some other people and what we could do. We don't. We're like every other. You have an office and you have a person working right next to another person who's working right next to another person, and they all combine. So we had to really look at how we were staffing to try to maintain our social distancing, and still get work done. So we did some remote work. We sent people home and basically said, we're going to ask you to work from home for a while to take care of it. And we staggered some of those days. So people are working Mondays and Wednesdays in the office when they have access to some of the computer systems and some of the information they need. And then other days they're working from home, so they're answering their phones. They're still working. They're answering their phones. They're getting on the computer. We've set them up with remote logins. They can get into their emails and do those things. But that's a challenge. And keeping the city going is critically important. So we've done that. They've stepped up. They're doing some good work, and I really do appreciate all the work that they are accomplishing. We restricted access to City Hall, much like the fire department, much like the police department. We restricted access to City Hall. We didn't want people just walking in and when this all started happening, the stay-at-home order, we had the doors open on one side, basically saying, hey, if you really had to come in here, but we had people coming in here for absolutely no reason at all, and really just that just weren't taking this serious at all. So we had to restrict City Hall, and the health department, same thing. We've got telephones, we've got email, we've got faxes. There's plenty of ways to get work done and get things completed. That doesn't mean you couldn't call. You can still call and set up an appointment if there's some absolute reason why you need to come in. But otherwise, there's a lot that can be done without it. So I touched my face, didn't I? Everybody out there's like, oh, he touched his face. I'm sorry. We all do that. So, so then the other part that we did is, putting into place the emergency action team or plans and protocols that the health department has. So the health department plans for just these type of events. The Norwood Health Department has been on it, and they've been staying really up to speed on this stuff. And I'm going to go through some of their stuff. But for just to look at some numbers, when you talk about the city or talk about the state of Ohio, we've got about 6,000 cases. And we've got, I think the most recent number is 529. I think originally I'd said 500 and something for Hamilton County. I think we're around 529, 530 cases. It's probably went up since Friday's numbers came out that are hospitalization, or those are cases in Hamilton County. That's not hospitalizations. So we have COVID-19 clearly in Hamilton County and all around this area. Let's talk about testing. The southwestern region, so Cincinnati area, Hamilton County, priority 1 testing is being done for healthcare workers and hospitalized patients. Priority 2 is for long-term care patients with symptoms and first responders with symptoms. So priority 1 and priority 2, that's who's being tested right now. So that leaves an awful lot of people out of the testing criteria. Even if you went to the doctor right now and the doctor might say, potentially that person has COVID-19, they wouldn't give you the test. They'd send you home, tell you to take care of yourself, send you home, maybe give you some information on it, but they're not really going to test and send you back. You have to come down with some serious symptoms of COVID-19 to be hospitalized. So it's an interesting aspect of it. The health department is only notified, the Norwood Health Department is only notified when there is a confirmed case of COVID-19. So if somebody's taken to the hospital because they potentially have COVID-19, their test results come back, then they receive the information. Whether that person becomes hospitalized, which every person does not become hospitalized. Some people are sent home. And however that is completed, whichever direction it goes, our health department gets in touch with that person, starts a case, starts surveillance of that person. And when I say surveillance, watching what they're doing, talking to them, and then helping them, providing tools, and not tools, but the information to help them not expose their loved ones to COVID-19. So that is the work that they do. We don't have a huge health department. I mean, people like to say, well, maybe we should cut the health department, but our health department brings some really incredible resources to a community that is the second largest community in Hamilton County. So we are blessed to have a health department and have individuals there with the training, the knowledge, and expertise. Dr. Frank Perino has been working with the health department for quite a few years. He's the acting health department or health commissioner right now. We've got Gina Croft and Brian Williamson, who have been working day and night on this stuff and really working to make sure that the city of Norwood is protected and that we're doing everything we can to limit the exposures that we have within our city. So let's talk about, I guess, the treatment for COVID-19. That there's really no preventative treatment for COVID-19 right now. I get a flu shot every year. I've had flu shots for many years. I still end up getting the flu every once in a while. But there's nothing for COVID-19 right now. I think they're pumping so much money, time, and effort into it. We'll see some changes there. The social distancing. One of the points that Brian Williamson over there at the health department asked me to really sort of bring up is that the strict social distancing is working. It's absolutely working. So flattening out that curve makes a big difference. Right now they're saying that the peak of the curve will be April 19th. So right in the middle of this month, right? April 19th. It's coming at us pretty quick. So we are in the next 2 weeks, we are sort of in the hot spot of it. So keep the social distancing going. So it's an important part of it. And then face coverings, they are recommending now that you wear face coverings, whether that is the mask that you make or whether it's even a bandana. And then wearing glasses, whether you're wearing safety glasses or some sort of glasses. The bandana is to stop you from potentially exposing people that you are around to COVID-19. The glasses would protect your membranes from actually letting anything get in. So if you are doing some of those essential shopping duties, say you got to go get milk, or you need some more food, those are times to wear the mask, and it's helpful. So it's not frowned upon. And it was frowned upon for quite a while because we had such a shortage of the personal protective equipment, that PPE, that we were worried that our hospitals and that our emergency response people wouldn't have the equipment that they need. And it's still somewhat a factor. The fire chief is going through, he looks at the burn rate on PPE, and he's really paying attention to that to make sure that his guys have the equipment that's necessary to do the job. So they are talking about wearing cloth masks and wearing masks and wearing potentially bandanas. It seems like just last year, if you walked in one of those stores with the bandana on, everybody would be running 10 different directions. But now you're fine to go and protect everybody with them. So let's see, another thing, something from Gina that she had sent is that COVID-19 is considered a class 1 reportable disease. So if you do end up getting a diagnosis of COVID-19, you are required, if you're in the city of Norwood, to report that to the health department. So that's a confirmed case that comes back that says, yes, you have COVID-19. You are required to report that to the health department. So we ask that you do take care of that. So the next question, and something that people I keep getting hit up on, is, how many cases of COVID-19 do we have in the city of Norwood, and how many people are maybe in each ward, or do I have a COVID-19 case behind my house? And if you look at any of the websites, you'll see that COVID-19 is all over the country, the United States. It is absolutely in Hamilton County. We're a part of Hamilton County. It is absolutely in Cincinnati and Silverton and Deer Park, and it is all around. So if you're thinking that the city of Norwood is sort of an island and we're going to have a limited amount of them, we're going to have the same amount as Hamilton County has throughout the area. We're not going to be an anomaly where it's different. We have a couple of long-term health care centers also. So those are sort of an area. Those are touchy areas. They're I'll call them areas where if you look at other states and other cities and other counties, they call them strike zones or strike force. They'll put a strike force in to try to limit how much COVID-19 damage is done in there. So we have some of that in the city of Norwood. If I can say categorically that the city of Norwood has COVID-19, that the city of Norwood, I know we've had one death. We've probably had more deaths than the one at this point. But I know there was one confirmed death of a person that was put in the hospital and ended up expiring from it. I don't know the specific situation of that person. And I would say that if you are looking for a specific finger to point at a house and say that a person who lives there, who lives across from the street from you, has it, I would say probably your best bet is to go It's all over in my neighborhood. I need to protect myself the best that I can. You need to follow and pay attention to the social distancing. You need to clean solid surfaces. You need to wash your hands. You need to do all the things that the CDC is saying to protect yourself. And that's how you get past this. So that's an important aspect of it. If you are a person that wants to watch numbers constantly and you're thinking you want to be able to see when it rises and when it falls within the city of Norwood, I don't think that's feasible, quite frankly, because we're not a little island. We've got neighbors all over the place that have this stuff. You're better off to look at Hamilton County as a whole area and really just follow it that way. I also look at it and say, if if you're one of those people that's like gathering information on COVID-19 and it's your hobby, it's what you do because you're not working right now, and you just can't wait for the flattening of that curve, and you're going to be the first person to get out and tell everybody that the curve is flattening. I'd say grab a book, do something to take your mind off of it, because it's not the 19th, and we feel like that's, they're pretty confident that's when we hit the peak of it. And then it's going to flatten out from there, but we don't know how quickly it'll flatten out. We don't know how quickly this will be done. So the stay-at-home order went out, right? It was issued in March, on March 23rd, and it was extended to May 1st, right? Extended to May 1st. So my prediction, and clearly I'm not an expert, if you're looking for any sort of light at the end of the tunnel, is that in mid-May is when all the flowers are really starting to pop out, and that's when things will start loosening back up, and that's when we will start moving around. And I look at that and say, well, mid-May, okay, this is a terrible time for people who are out of work, who have lost their jobs, who do not have the income coming in. But then you also look outside, and we've had some absolutely beautiful days, and we've got nothing but better days coming. April showers bring May flowers. When all those flowers are coming out, that's when we're all going to want to be outside. So keep your eye on the prize that's right there, and I do feel like it's right there. And don't dwell on the day-to-day, because quite frankly, that day-to-day stuff with this COVID-19 is going to be hard to swallow. It's tough to deal with this every day, and there's no reason to deal with it every day unless you are a healthcare professional and you're chasing down challenges with it. But if you're just sitting at home watching this, and you get up in the morning and watch it all day, and watch it in the evening and go to bed, that's not good. It's not good. Try to focus on some other things. Focus on some stuff that's interesting. So here's some parts to keep it in perspective. During World War I, right? So 1917. The mayor was Harry Engelhart, and I think about this guy, and I think about what he was going through as the mayor when all of this stuff went down. So during those times, citizens, community members, were buying war bonds. So everybody was buying war bonds, and they were sending their sons off. Everybody was enlisting. The doughboys were enlisting to go into war, and it was the war with the trenches. And what the citizens here in Norwood did was they planted gardens and they conserved materials and to support the war efforts, right? So you think that how hard that was at that time for the community of Norwood. They were getting information back on City of Norwood residents that were dying in the war. We've got plaques all over City Hall with names on them of City of Norwood residents that were going off to war. Think about that, and that's one part of it. The other one is World War II. Allen Road Bush was the mayor in 1941. A day and days that live in infamy. The end of democracy as we know it. That's what we were fighting. That we were. It wasn't that we were saying, well, this will be over in the middle of May, or even if it runs into June. That's not a big deal. But World War II was another big one. That's when we were sending troops to war. That's when we were getting telegrams back, coming back to families saying that they lost a loved one. This was when you had the Gold Star banners in the windows for the families, and that, again, victory gardens. Maybe the theme here is that I look at it and say, like, get out and plant something. Get out in the yard and plant some vegetables. I know they're hard to come by right now. I think there was a report from Home Depot and Lowe's that it's hard to get plants right now. But now's the time to really get outside and look at your gardens and think about how we can do some. So I also think there are some interesting things that have come from this. And I don't mean to trivialize this at all. That is not my intent. But it is important to recognize that this is not the end of days. This is a challenge that we're facing and going through. So here's some of the challenges, or here's some of the things that have came from. More family time. Reconnecting with family over dinners. I mean, the restaurants are closed. You got to eat somewhere. So, having a family dinner is something that's maybe make a resurgence. I know my family's been eating together every night, and it's been pretty nice. It's made us slow down. It's made us come together. Sitting on the porch or on the deck, watching the world. Last year we had a big push by the Norwood Together group. I think the Norwood Together group, and there was a big push on some of these porch parties, and I know I spruced up my front porch, and I absolutely have been loving it, because sitting out on the front porch, just watching my neighborhood has been just so much fun here recently. People are out walking, and they do the social distancing, but they're out walking and they're saying hello to each other. And I'm seeing people in my neighborhood that I haven't seen for years that are out walking their dog, and you wonder, well, that's absolutely something that's good. So taking a walk with your family. You see whole family units taking a walk together, 4 people walking down the street. I saw the Leach family walking with their dog and their kids, and it's great to see that. I really do love to see that. Use of our electronic infrastructure. So we've started with what we're doing with the city is on Mondays we are having video meetings where the fire chief, police chief, the safety service director, the superintendent of public works, the health commissioner, and a couple of others are all coming together and utilizing that video conferencing. And quite frankly, it's working out extremely well, and we're getting some work done, and we're sharing information. We call it the interdepartmental communication, but it's a great tool, and we'll continue to use it after this is over with. We are also, even today with it being Easter, my family had a video conferencing. At one point, we had 18 people on this video conference, on this Zoom meeting. And it was so much fun to see my niece, who is in Hawaii, and my nephew, who is in Colorado, and another nephew that's in Oklahoma, connecting with my mom, who's in Anderson, and my brothers and sisters all together on that one screen. So it was really interesting and nice to see that on that Zoom meeting. So we still had a good Easter get together. So working from home, another item that we've gotten much better at. A heightened sense of desire to be with others. You really don't. We didn't realize maybe how nicely we had it with the social interaction and the connections. And now that we're missing it, it really makes me want to be around people and around my friends and all of that. So that's an important aspect of it. I'll tell you this other one, the love and the support for the restaurants and the people that work at restaurants and the friends and family that you see in restaurants. The desire to sit down at a nice Italian place with a bottle of Chianti and have a good conversation. Man, we miss those. And I think that when this is all over, we are going to see a resurgence of that. And it is when you take something away from us like that, it makes it so much sweeter when you get it back. So I think that's important. And then apparently I just heard, Listerman's is doing a heck of a business over there. He does the home brewing stuff. He's only open a few days a week, but he's got the home brewing equipment. And apparently there's a real resurgence in home brewing. And everybody who's sitting at home is thinking, man, I want to do some home brewing. So there are some good things that are coming out of this. So, the idea is to keep it in perspective. There have been much bigger challenges that our community has went through, and we came out of those okay, and we will come out of this okay. The last part is on COVID-19, is I heard that 2020 is a unique leap year. It's a very unique leap year. So it has 29 days in February, 300 days in March, and 5 years in April. That is sort of how all of us feel. But you know what? There is light at the end of the tunnel. We are doing what is necessary to get through this together, and we will. and we'll come out of it a better community than we have been, a better city, a better nation. And there are some potentially some good byproducts of this. So please try to keep it in perspective. Keep yourselves healthy. Try to keep your family healthy. Continue the social distancing, and it'll be over soon, right? So that's my COVID-19 part. I'll tell you what I did sort of skip on the COVID-19 was all the reports that come out. Situation report on COVID-19 comes out about every 2 days. This comes out from the Hamilton County Emergency Management, and it gives you an executive. It gives the mayor and different people an executive summary on safety and security status, food, water, sheltering status. This is from Emergency Management, Hamilton County Emergency Management. Health and medical status, energy status, no current disruptions, communication status, no current disruptions, transportation. So our emergency management was put into effect and took off basically March 13th. They went into operation, and they have been putting out these reports to everyone. The big challenge, up front was and has, I guess, continues to be is hospital space and making sure that we've got capacity for people that could potentially be hospitalized. So that's an important part of it. But we do have Hamilton County Emergency Management is on it. They are professionals. They know what to do. They've got plans in place, much like our health department, the City of Norwood Health Department. They are doing a good job for us and staying on this. So continue. I can't say it enough. The social distancing, washing your hands, taking care of each other, and we'll get through this. So now let's talk about the first 90 days with the City of Norwood. So this is a State of the City address. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Staff in place. Some of the first things that we had to do was get a good safety service director in place, a good superintendent of public works in place, the interim chief building official, which is the building commissioner and plans examiner. We got that in place. And then the mayor's court magistrate all sort of squared away and everything good to go. So we've been chugging along pretty good with that. We got the union agreements taken care of in the first 90 days. Police, fire, the clerks union, which includes our emergency dispatchers, and then the public works union. Those union contracts had to be completed and negotiated and completed for us to move into to put together our financial recovery plan. So those were important aspects of it. We also got our new fire chief appointed and put in place within this time frame. So we made some very good progress. We had very good negotiations with all four of these organizations. They came to the table, and I think we have very fair, good agreements, and we're off to a good start. And I think that morale has improved, and I know that our communications have improved quite a bit, and will continue to improve. So I'm very, very happy of what we were able to accomplish there, because it rolled right into our financial recovery plan, and that was an important aspect of it. So big and bold right here, I have the overall financial health of the city. And when all the COVID-19 stuff started, started in March, we're into April now, it's going to go into May, right? When all of that started, there was somebody that said, you need to shut everything down. Don't hire anybody. Don't do anything with the city. Just shut everything down and wait this thing out. You can't just shut it down. You can't shut it down. There have to be plans put in place. That progress has to be made. I mean, we have an ambulance that needed to be purchased, so the financial planning had to be put in place, and we did that, and we continued to work, and we continue to work through this time. The financial health of the city, you say, well, how much of this is going to affect our earnings tax, which is really a big part of what has happened. A lot of people have gotten either furloughed or laid off, or they are, an interesting aspect of it is they're not working at their job, their normal job. They're actually working at home now. So does that mean now that they're working in the City of Norwood for the next 3 months? And if they're working in the City of Norwood, should they be paying City of Norwood earnings tax for those 3 months that they work in the City of Norwood? So, there's a lot of different challenges that are going on with sort of figuring out where we're at with earnings tax. Earnings tax is last year's earnings tax. So really what we're looking at is this is going to affect what happens for our 2020 earnings tax that's coming in, as we speak, if the people are doing the taxes the proper way as they work, they're paying some earnings tax. But when it all clears up, it's going to be an effect that hits us in 2021. What does that mean for us? When we put together the financial recovery plan, we put together a 5-year plan. And at the end of each year, we made sure there was a carryover. There was a carryover of $1 million something. So we've worked to put some reserves in there and some contingencies in there. We also have quite a bit on the plate for this year, quite a few projects on the plate for this year. So if we are really thinking about what we can, there might be some things that we can put off. There are other things that we cannot. We've got to replace the roof on City Hall. It's leaking water into City Hall. So we know we have to do that. We have an ambulance that we have to replace. So we are purchasing an ambulance. There are certain things that have to be done. There are other projects that, quite frankly, might not get completed. But there are a lot of projects that will get completed. I know the resurfacing will get completed. That's not something we're going to step back on. We're going to continue with our roads programs. There are a lot of parks programs, a lot of parks projects. Some of those projects we can take care of no problem. Others, maybe we can push them off for a little way. So there are some areas that we need to look at in our budget. But we are in pretty good financial shape with the way the financial recovery plan was laid out and with the work that was done over the last few years. And I'll be the first to say, over the last couple of years, the city council worked hard to really try to sort of change the way our finances were for lack of a better word, I'd say scheduled, and the way we were doing the certain policies and procedures that we were doing were not really the best. So they worked hard to fix a lot of those things, changing keys and working to make sure that money is going in the right funds at the right times. So we actually ended up in a better position. The city is in a better position now financially to handle a COVID-19 situation than we have been for the last probably 20 years. So if I could say anything, it's that we are sitting in a much better financial position to handle a situation like this than we've ever been, and I think we're okay. That doesn't mean we're not going to continue to work to make sure and monitor and really check and verify the numbers and watch our spending. We've got a new eGov system coming in, software system coming in that will help us and really should fine-tune the purchasing procedures and accounts payable and accounts receivable, and there's a lot of different areas that this software system is going to help us. So we're going to continue to work to make sure that the finances of the city are in good shape. We got a lot of projects. So the Norwood lateral cleanup, Clint Zimmerman as the superintendent of public works worked to make sure that was done, and they did a great job. There's a storm sewer repair that's going on right now. We're working on the lights, trying to figure out what lights are necessary and what lights we can get activated, and they're replacing some guardrails that have been destroyed for years. So that's projects. We've got not only the City Hall roof, but the community center roof needs some attention also. I'm sorry, I got a scratchy throat all of a sudden. I'm doing a lot of quick talking here. There's a lot to go over. But the community center roof also needs some attention. So after we get the City Hall roof sort of figured out, we'll work on that. We also have the fire department roof that we're starting to work on. And it has, one of the first things that the chief did was pull me over there and say, look, and we walked around and he showed me 8 or 10 different areas where the roof is leaking. And the way that building is built, it has some strange, the way the roof is set up, there's some strange areas that have been problems for years. So getting that roof in shape also is a big part of it. Roofs in general, I'm sure Public Works roof probably needs to be looked at, and the Health Department roof. So all of the roofs are going to have to get some work. Street projects, we've got the Indian Mountain Street project going, and that has Sheridan, Wakefield Place, a couple of other streets in there too. So we're going to continue working on the streets project. We're going to continue to work with City Council and with their infrastructure committee to put together a good street program. We've got to evaluate them, and I know there was some discussion about how that evaluation takes place at the Financial Recovery Commission meeting. And I think Brad Schwartz brought up, we need to look at not just the age of the streets and the condition of the streets, but also the use of the streets and the amount of traffic on those streets. So looking at some traffic flow and doing those things. I mentioned that with the street program, we also want to take a close look at our infrastructure underneath. We want to look at water mains and storm sewer projects that maybe should be completed first. A lot of times people will say, it drives them crazy because when somebody resurfaces a street, when we resurface a street, it seems like within months there's a water main break where there's some reason why they had to dig a hole into that street. And you have to keep in mind that our streets are laid over an infrastructure, the water lines and the sewer lines, that is very old. So when they do a resurfacing project, they come in and they'll mill it down, which is a lot of vibrating, a lot of cutting and grinding. So milling, they're taking off a level of it. And then they lay the concrete down or the blacktop down. After they lay the blacktop down, they got to run the rollers over it, right? So those are all processes that are vibrating and moving the ground, and potentially it does cause problems for the infrastructure that is underneath. So there are times where they have to dig up the road to fix a repair that was made because we resurfaced that street. It's not what we want to do. That's not what we want to do after we put a nice, smooth, beautiful surface on that. But it is something that happens, and at times it's going to happen, and we move forward with it. What we can do, and what the Safety Service Director is doing, is making sure that when we get those street opening permits, that we're closing those holes back up properly, that we're actually compacting the materials that go back in properly so it doesn't sink. We're putting the proper amount of blacktop in there, and then we're sealing the edges to try to make sure that that penetration into that new surface is not as noticeable as a poor job of closing it back up. So we are working on those things. But please do keep in mind that the last thing we want to do is cut a hole in the street to make a water main repair after something like that happens. But it's going to happen. It's the process of resurfacing at times that causes the problems. Now, don't get me wrong. There have been times where Duke Energy came in and had to do some lines, and they cut what I consider to be a perfectly good street and went all the way down. And I think Councilman Geraci had some plans and has some plans where we want to try to put an ordinance in place where they have to if they're going to do a cut, they have to resurface a certain amount and to do some things there. I think he's still working on that process, but that's something that could be helpful when it comes to some of those things. So street projects continue. Park improvements are going to continue. I know there's some different citizen-led issues or initiatives on parks and playgrounds. I think there's a survey out right now. I know the Parks and Playgrounds Committee meets, and I know that Chris Kelsch, as the chairperson of that committee, is very active and wants to see a lot of interesting changes to the parks. He's got some great ideas. He is definitely full of ideas when it comes to parks and playgrounds. So working with the different citizen-led initiatives and working with the Parks and Playgrounds Committee, I think we'll see some nice improvements in our parks again this year. Let's see. One of the other things that we really, I feel, was a major accomplishment was the adjustment of the salaries and sort of the organizational planning. So I came to council in January with an organizational plan for the city hall staff. I recognized right away that we have all sorts of potential in different areas, whether that's economic development or whether that's grant writing, and there's so much potential, but there are not people in place to grab hold of that. So I put together a organizational staffing plan that was not voted in January, which I would have liked to, but with the financial recovery plan, there was some guidance that said, well, you couldn't do that until you changed the plan. So it slowed down what I feel like I could accomplish in those first 2 months, in those first 3 months. And now I'm in a situation where in the next week, I will be posting some positions with the city of Norwood. A position like the community development director. And that person is sort of our economic development coordinator, and a building commissioner, a person who works with our zoning department and works with the building department to make sure that we're doing everything right there. I think these are critically important positions. Now, what I'll do is post those. I'd like to say I'm going to post those positions, and then the next day I'll be able to hire people. But you know that it doesn't work that way. So I'm going to post those positions and start collecting up the resumes and start the interview process. With our social distancing, I'm sure I'll be doing some Zoom meetings and interviews with people. I would like to have some of these positions filled in June. Even the safety service director position will be posted. John Murphy's done an exceptional job as a safety service director. I really feel like he has done an exceptional job for me and for the city of Norwood. He's a friend of mine. He's been a friend of mine for many years, but even for the city of Norwood, as he stepped in as a gentleman who was the chief of police for a period of time, but his level of communication, his level of desire to help people has really made him a huge benefit to the city of Norwood. Now, there are other areas that the safety service director has to be involved in that is not his expertise, and I'd like to try to find a person that potentially can come in as the safety service director that brings maybe a bigger toolkit than John has. But it's going to be hard to replace John because of just the way he is and the things that he can do. So we'll see how that works. But those jobs will get posted. When am I going to hire those positions? It'll probably be June. So it's April. It's probably May. It's probably June, middle of June, I hope, is when I can get those people on board. And that's sort of where I scheduled them in with the budget and with everything that went through with the financial recovery plan. So we have a period of time to interview people and try to find the absolute best and most qualified candidate for the city of Norwood. So those are important parts of it, and I really want to take care of that. The other part that I wanted to talk about within this, and I think I've been talking now for 50 minutes, so I do have to drink some water during this thing because I'm not a professional talking head. So utilities and special and really specifically water bills I wanted to talk about. Recently the city of Norwood's had some bad publicity on our water bills and on the system that is in place. The only thing I can say from the start on that one is that, almost, I guess it was 2002, it was 2001, 2002, we were looking into the radio read meters for the water department, and we had some plans in place and we had some payback on them. What that system would have done at that time was make it so that the water meter reader did not have to go into every home and take a meter reading. So your water meter is typically downstairs in your basement, right? And typically your water meter reader for the city of Norwood has a big set of keys, and when you're not home, he goes in maybe the side door, goes down in the basement, does a water meter reading, comes back out, meter's read, moves to the next house. An antiquated system. It worked really great through the 30s, 40s, 50s. 60s, 70s, man, how are we still doing that same process now? I don't know. We had a problem with the water meter reader, and he took some time off, so we actually were putting blue cards out and asking people to read their own water meter. That's not the best system. That's certainly not the way we want to do it. Then most recently now, we're not sending city employees into anybody's home. So again, we have water meter reading problems. We're putting out blue cards and we're asking for individuals to read their own water meters. So some people are better at reading their water meters than others. Sometimes, it's the telephone game. The communication between here and there and when it gets into the computer is not the best. So we really have to look at how we are doing, what we are doing, and how we're accomplishing this task. Clearly, there's technology out there that we should have adopted and implemented years and years ago that we need to do now. But we're also in we're also in sort of a catch-22 because we've got the Ohio EPA saying you need to look at your water distribution system, the whole system, and the water towers, and we need to figure out what we're doing with the water towers and what's going on with the system pressure. And so we've got a water analysis that's being completed right now there's an engineering study being done on our water system, and Greater Cincinnati Waterworks is involved in that, and we're trying to figure out what's going on with our water system. So, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, should we be implementing radio read water systems and doing that today, I'd say yes. Should we be doing that today? I would say yes again, but we have the other part to it is we're in the middle of this engineering study. So we've got to wait until that engineering study gets done before we can even move in a direction to fix how water meters are read. Now, I know that Chris Kelsch is probably shaking his head because that's not our only problem with our water department, and I'm not claiming that is the only problem is the way that they're read. We have problems with our software system also that needs to be addressed, and I know that Clint Zimmerman is working on addressing that software system and trying to make some changes so that we don't have the problems that we've had most recently, which is where many residents received water bills that were way, way higher than what is normal for them. Of course, throws a big red flag up. And then you have to figure out, okay, well, you've got a normal water bill of $300. Now your water bill is $700. What happened? So there have been a lot of challenges with that, and that's where we have a black eye. And it's important to know that we are working on that. We recognize here at City Hall that it is a challenging time for all of you, and it makes it even more challenging when you get a water bill that is just crazy for you. So with that, at City Hall, if you are working with City Hall, if you're calling in and talking to us, and we are trying our best to find the solutions, find out what the problem is. If you're working with us, we are waiving late fees. If this is the first time you've had a problem with that, we're waiving late fees. And we're really working to help people get caught up and get these things straightened out. So we have staff in place. And if you are calling into the City of Norwood's water department and talking to them, we're taking care of it. So talking about some of the things that we're trying to do. We're software upgrades, the corrections, that's what I mentioned with Clint. Installation and training of a new software system, that actually was supposed to be taking place here pretty soon. I'm not sure how that's going to proceed with the COVID-19 delays, but it is only a delay, so we will be working on that. It has more user-friendly and more accessible reporting, so that'll make us more efficient actually here in City Hall. Closer examination of the water bills before they go out. So water bills have typically gone out with, most of the time there is a high-low report. So if it's a very higher bill than normal or a very much lower water bill than normal, you can look at that report and try to chase down what the problem is and before the bill even gets to the person. So we're going to work on those, and that's something that the Safety Service Director will be working with the water department to make sure that is addressed first. We've definitely had times where the water meter reader has went out and noticed something wrong and came back to the office and said, hey, at this address, they've got something going on with this. You need to call them. And we've made calls and helped people stop this from happening. But there are times where there's a spigot that's running, that the washer's leaking and the water's just running right down the drain. And, we've called people and said, hey, you've got a water leak. And then, 2 months later, a month later, they're coming into City Hall complaining because they got such a high water bill. It's going through your meter. That is water that's being consumed at your household. Who should pay for that? The City of Norwood and the community members, all the people that live around you should pay for that, or you should pay for that. So people have to take some responsibility for the water that goes through the water meter that they have. I'm not saying that's every instance. I am saying that does happen at times. There are people that have water that is just running down the drain, and then they scratch their head and wonder why they have a high water bill. So we're working on those. We're working on some tools to help the water department correspond and communicate. Those are important parts. More communication, more clear communication as we go along. and then more guidance and support to the water office from the administration, from actually supervision, getting them the tools, which we're working on the software stuff, and we'll make sure we continue to get them the tools to be efficient and effective in that role, and then really making sure that they're utilizing the tools and that things are happening in a timely manner so that there's efficient operation of that. So a big one to understand right now is with the current situation we're in with the COVID-19 stuff is our guys are not going out and turning off water. So if you are late on paying your water bill and you see a public works truck pull up in front of your house, they're not coming there to shut off your water. That's not how it's working right now. Once this stuff's all over with, you need to make sure that you're working with the city, working with the water department to get things taken care of. But your water's not going to be turned off right now. So keep that in mind. Waiving the late fees. It's really a matter of you working, putting out the effort and working with the city of Norwood to make sure that the problems that you see that are happening are corrected. Whether it's our problem, if it's our problem, we'll be the first people to admit it. There was a mistake made, and we'll correct it, and we'll correct the bill, and we move on. If it's a problem that you're having, we'll help you work through that, and we'll work with you on those things. So, payments still need to be made. Your water bill, people say it's a water bill, and it is the water bill, but it's the water, sewer, and trash that's all involved in that bill. So you still need to be doing that. So the last thing you want to do, and then I'll get off the water department stuff, is last thing you want to do is just ignore that utility. You really wouldn't ignore your electricity or your cable bill. You can't ignore certain things, and the water in your home is a critical part of living there and having that home habitable. So if you are ignoring it, if you're ignoring the blue card, if the blue card comes in and says, please read your water meter, you should be taking care of those things. Those are important aspects of living there and utilizing the water. So it's an important part of it. If you don't think about it, if you don't have water running in your house, it's a bad situation. So that's something there. The water department will work with you, but you have to put the effort out. You have to talk to them. You have to make the effort to get things straightened out, and we will work with you. And I guarantee you, we are working to make this better and to make sure that this does not happen in the future. So the last part of this conversation, and I'd said this would go until about 8:30. I don't think I have 30 minutes left in me, but I have maybe 15 minutes to talk about communication. The city of Norwood has a social media policy that was passed by this council. We have put that into effect to try to utilize Facebook in a very positive manner, in a manner that is productive and helpful to the citizens of Norwood. So the Facebook page, the City of Norwood, Ohio, it's the City Hall page. We plan on putting up, not just events that are going on within the city, but also communicate important parts from the City of Norwood. Right now there's a link or a survey put on the page, and we ask that each of you fill out that survey. And actually, we ask for each adult to fill out that survey. And what we are doing is starting to populate an email list. So with an email list, and if you put your telephone number on there, we can also do a telephone list. With an email list, we can start doing MailChimps and bulk emails out to everyone. You have to start somewhere, and this is the start of putting together a citywide email list. Same thing for telephones. For telephones, we can do the all calls, and I know everybody hates the robocalls. But my church, like many churches, they put out a call that says, before, it doesn't give you a robocall, it tells you exactly who it comes from. So it would be, it would start out by saying, this is an important message from the City of Norwood. So then you will hopefully listen to it. So we can do that with telephone numbers. And then the other part is text messaging. There are services out there, so we can start doing some text messaging to help get information out. So those are all important tools that we want to put in place. We would like to do a quarterly newsletter from the City of Norwood. with sort of some seasonal information. And that can be, we can mail all that stuff out. But when you talk about mailing it out, it's 7,000 homes times 50 cents each one, plus all the different consumables. So it ends up being pretty expensive. If everybody fills out this survey, if a large portion of people fill out the survey, and we can collect up the emails, and we'll start trying to collect up emails from the water department also. As people sign up for water as new residents, we'll try to collect up their emails. And then we can start doing a newsletter that goes out as an email to everyone. So we're really going to try to use a couple of different forms of communication to make sure that everybody gets the information that they need. We're still going to have to mail some stuff out. Probably with the bulletins, we will put them around the community. I know that the Norwood Star, the local newspaper, the Norwood Star, if you're not getting the Norwood Star, I highly recommend that you sign up for the Norwood Star also. It has all sorts of great City of Norwood events on it. And it's a great little newspaper, hometown newspaper with a lot of fun facts. I really enjoy. They do a history from the Historical Society. They do a history of Norwood portion. So the Norwood Star is another great communication tool. So please do pick that up. So we're going to try to continue to get more and more information out to you as we proceed. I know that there's some information that is critically important. So that leads me right into Smart 911. The fire department and police department both, I think, have endorsed the Smart 911 system, so you can look that up online. Smart 911 connects your cell phone with some of your personal information that can be helpful in an emergency situation. The City of Norwood utilizes that service. You can go online and look at all the information that tells you what your personal information is used for and what they're asking for. But it's an important tool that can be used. So please do look at Smart 911 also, and share this information with your neighbors, with the community members around you. I know I have some elderly neighbors around me. I guarantee you they're not on Facebook. But just word of mouth goes a long way. So that's an important part of it. So the future, and the future is very bright. I look at that May. I look at May, and I say, oh, we're getting so close to it, and the flowers are starting to come out. We're starting to have some really beautiful summer-like days. So it's getting better and better. One of the things that you're going to see coming about is a summer concert series at Victory Park. That plan is starting to come into place. Those will be some evening meetings where we have concerts at the gazebo, and and it's not a new idea or a new concept. I mean, Victory Park's been around for years and years and years, and there have been events there for years and years, but the gazebo has not been utilized as much as it should and could. Just last year, when the farmers market was going on, they had the farmers market, and then they had a band playing there. I think it was the high school symphony band or the Winds. And it was such a neat event for me to see. It just brought back such a hometown feel, and there were people just sitting around in their lawn chairs around the gazebo listening to this music. It is such a neat way to utilize that park, and I really want to see that park utilized more. So we're gonna schedule some of those events, and it might be just church groups and choirs and some different things like that. But we'll get it started and see how it's received, and then we'll just go from there, because I do think that is very much Norwood. The Norwood Day Parade, I'm sure that the Chamber of Commerce is planning on the Norwood Day Parade. They've got it half of it already figured out, but that's always a great event. Porch parties and the street parties that went on last year. There were so many fun porch parties and so many great street parties that went on. And I went past, some of these just driving past or even riding my bike past, and those people were just enjoying themselves so much. The porch parties was something that I was really impressed with. And now sitting outside on the front porch of my house, because it gave me the inspiration to do a little extra and get my porch reactivated. We've lived in that house over 20 years, and we spent more time on the porch last year, and we've spent more time this year on the porch than we have in many years. And so it's great to see those activities going on. And I know the Norwood Together, the community engagement group, and some of those the offshoots of that will be going. Wasson Way, the Wasson Way Trail has been packed with people. My son has ridden that trail, it seems like every day. Will is riding his bike a lot. I've ridden the Wasson Way Trail some, and it is just such a great addition to the city of Norwood and to that area. So if you haven't ridden your bike over there and ridden the trail, the Wasson Way Bike Trail is a great trail, a lot of fun. Parks, we've got a lot of new equipment and revitalization going on with our parks. And this year, when we start putting some of this equipment in, we're going to have some reopening of the parks. And we'll try to communicate out to that little local neighborhood there when the reopening is, and we'll have some small celebrations, probably just in the evening, but just trying to bring the community together and sort of reopen the park and make sure everybody knows it's there and what kind of improvements and just what an asset the park is that's right down the street from their house that maybe they haven't went to in the last few years. Basketball camps, tennis camps, there's a lot of different things that are planned for this summer. I don't know how the swimming pool season will work. That's going to be interesting, but it will all work out. We'll get beyond this. We have a very bright future in the city of Norwood. Oh, one last thing, and Mary C. Miller would get on me if I forgot to mention this, the census. If you have not taken the census, if you have not went online, the census is very important to the city of Norwood. A lot of people have came to me and said, hey man, I'm going to fix my streets. Well, you know what? The census can have a bearing on whether we get our streets fixed or not. It's population. A lot of the grants, a lot of the funding goes out is population based. If you are not accounted for as a resident of the city of Norwood, that it could have it could reduce our chances of getting grants. So you definitely want to make sure that you do the census. You can go online and do the census. It's very quick and easy. If you need help with doing the census, there are a couple of different resources to get that. You can call City Hall and we will talk to you about what resources there are for getting forms sent to you. But the census is something that's critically important to the city of Norwood. So please do take the time to complete the census. And then another part is supporting our local restaurants. If they are open and are doing carry out, please try to make an evening, at least one evening or 2 evenings where you support our local restaurants, because this is a challenging time for them. And but we'll get through this. And it seems like we've been forced to stay home and eat at home, and Kroger's making more money. But it also seems like my bank account, I got a little bit extra money in there because I haven't been able to go out to eat. I haven't been able to go out to dinner. So when this is all over shortly, we'll all be going out to dinner and having a little meal. So we have a bright future here in the city of Norwood. Very bright. We will get beyond this time, and we're going to have a great summer. And I look forward to seeing all of you out and about. Thank you very much for giving me a little bit of your time. Hopefully I answered a lot of questions that maybe were hanging on. But if not, the City Hall's here. You can email me and you can call into the office and we'll get you to the right people to get information for you. For the COVID-19 stuff, the CDC and Ohio Department of Health numbers, and our health department also, but the resources are out there. You just need to look around and get them. So again, thank you very much. I'm Victor Schneider, and we'll be seeing you around.